I really appreciate everyone joining. And with me today, as many of you already know, is Sean Huurman, a great friend of mine. He is the co-founder of Populus Advisors and a great knowledgeable expert in human resources strategy. He helps CEOs and advisors and PE companies and multinational companies to understand their workforce problems and how to solve those problems, especially around leadership and team formation. So I appreciate you being with me here today, Sean. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brad. Thrilled to be here.
That Sean and I are going to share a great presentation that we worked on, one that I got inspired by because I read an article from Andrea Miller, who is an expert in human-centered AI and one that I follow. She wrote a great article about how you can get better at being able to be interviewed for your AI skills. And I wrote her back asking her if I could turn it around and do a webinar on how to do interviewing from a company perspective, because many of the skills that she had were skills that companies should be using to interview those candidates so that they can be have better AI on their team. So it was a great article, and I have the link here. So when you get this sent to you as part of this presentation, if you're on it, then you can go and click on that link and read that article. Great article. So the interview that changes everything. That's a great title, because what we're going to talk about today is what companies are doing wrong, which is they're only asking questions. It's a show not tell mentality. This human-centered AI that I always talk about is really important in driving the case forward, where you are able to see exactly what the person is doing on the screen. And we're going to talk about that a lot more. So you're going to have to ask them to share their screen and ask them to solve some real problems so that you can see how they're using AI. And you'll also get a feeling for how they think, which is a twofer.
Yeah, Brad, I think, when you think about the interview and where we are with AI, the beautiful thing is we can rely on a lot of core human resource principles. And when I think about, techniques like behavioral interviewing and case studies, right? This is simply adapting those types of interview processes to the new age of AI and making sure that the folks that are talking about their knowledge as you get deeper into the presentation, they can actually prove to you that they have the skills that you're looking for.
And that's great, Sean, because those old school tools are very important combined with what we're going to talk about in kind of getting over some of this, what I would call AI, even AI slop in the human resources department, because we have gotten so reliant on AI on writing job postings and reviewing job candidates, and the candidates have gotten even better at putting together resumes using AI. So there's so much on both sides that it's hard to get down to the real view of what a person has from a skills perspective. So those are great old tools and new tools.
That's right.
So my target profile is service business. So I always like to point out how this matters to service businesses. AI tools, as we talk about, are becoming commoditized. If you're not doing something, that window of opportunity is closing. Service businesses are people businesses. So 95% of your cost profile are people. And those people need to be up to date with the most technological skills, and AI is on the cutting edge of that. And then the real major problem is that as you try and put in AI tools, AI implementers are scarce. You're going to pay premium. So if you can find ones that you can grow into those slots, that is a real huge portion of hiring for these AI skills.
Yeah, as you can imagine, our focus as a firm is really on that bullet on the, or I'm sorry, that box on the top right. Implementation expertise is scarce. We have a very large global client that we're working with that have implemented a significant amount of AI tools throughout their entire supply chain. But what they're finding is they're not getting the ROI because their employees are not familiar with or unable to utilize those tools to the extent that they need to get those benefits. So making sure that you've got the right talent in place, either through a development plan or what we're talking about today in terms of hiring that technical skill set is absolutely key.
Absolutely. So we touched on this, but what's the cost of getting AI illiterate hires? And I kind of like that new coin term, AI illiterate. And what Sean said is that if you don't have at least the base amount of AI literacy within your organization, that there's a huge chance that your AI programs are going to fail. It's been pointed out, and my book goes over it again, that the perfect ratio of spending is 70% on humans, meaning training, implementation, and change management, and 30% on tools and processes. And most companies do it the exact opposite way. They spend 70% on the tools, and maybe if you get lucky, they spend 30% on the humans. And so there's a huge opportunity cost that if you don't have this AI fluency, that you'll get pushback because everybody's afraid, and then you'll have to retrain and or just pull the tool out. So most service businesses, especially smaller businesses, are one person away from getting a much higher AI literacy within their company.
Yeah, the key here, Brad, is really to make sure that you've got a strategy, an AI strategy that your people understand and that you're able to monitor. When you think about the opportunity cost, obviously lost production if the output is poor because of lack of understanding, lack of checking the output from AI and making sure that your employees are using AI in a way that benefits the company as opposed to simply themselves.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that they can, if we could do it right, they'll be using AI in a way that benefits the company and themselves. That's the perfect world.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, AI should create better jobs for people, right? It's going to lessen the amount of administration or research, et cetera, that they need to do and allow them to get their job done faster, which is great. And we need to be able to give employees the opportunity to take advantage of that productivity. But as companies, we need to pull some of that productivity back as well so that we can get the return on the investment, right?
Absolutely. And I think of it more when we're talking about culture. And I think of three things that we want our employees to do with some of that time. But you're right. Some of that time has to be pulled back as productivity, or we need to have that time invested in ways that we can create productivity. And I talk about three ways, and that's being more able to communicate with your customers and with your other employees, being more creative, and which is you're able to create top line product value potentially, and being more strategic, which is also another way that you can create top line product value. So you've either got to do one or the other. You've got to give that time back, which means you you've got to find ways to cut costs, or you've got to find ways to grow the business, or you've got to get a culture in the business that is rising because of these factors, and therefore your whole business works better. We all know that that also can work.
Yeah, I've got one of my partners tells a story. He came from one of the premier strategy firms, and he stays in touch with a lot of the partners there. And they were talking about the fact that they've seen associate attrition plummet. The retention numbers are through the roof. And so they're looking at it saying, this is great. Like, what are we doing differently? What they realized is they didn't have an AI strategy, but their associates were so good at using AI that they had been able to basically create this easy job for them, as opposed to the firm starting to put more pressures on them to say, well, okay, you're getting that piece of your work done, but to your point, Brad, how can you take that and think about that differently for the client and really advance what we're trying to accomplish for the client, which means you're probably going to replace those hours with critical thinking as opposed to just taking those hours for yourself.
Absolutely. And so I look at it as four levels that we're trying to get our employees and our candidates up. And so I think as you start to think about your candidates, these are the levels that you want. AI tourists, they've used ChatGPT a few times, they put in a few copy paste outputs, they don't have a way. An AI consumer, they understand maybe basic prompting frameworks, they maybe have a paid subscription to one tool. And then AI practitioner, which is the level I would want an AI hire to come in at, or just a hire that understands AI. I would want them to come in at. And that would be they understand which tool to select when, they're able to do prompt iteration, they're able to verify skills. And then finally, the AI strategist is someone that drives adoption, understands agentic AI, can do workflows, can help your business implement. And so all of these levels are important, but the more you can progress up the chain, both inside and with your new hires to level 3 and level 4, the better off your business will be.
I think level 3 and level 4 is so critical for services organizations. You've probably seen the article, with the case against Deloitte where AI was being utilized and the client went back for their fees. I don't think services companies should shy away from utilizing AI, but I think they have to be very open and upfront about how they're using it, and that it's allowing them to get to this level 3, level 4 type of work, right? That their practitioners are utilizing AI to support the client. And again, back to what I talked about before, moving to more of a strategic discussion and solutions as opposed to shortcuts.
And we're going to have more and more mm, very interesting discussions as service-based businesses about hourly rates. And I've talked to a lot of lawyers, and they are so embedded with hourly rates. And their work is just getting easier and easier and less hours. So I don't know where we're coming as a society, but this is coming soon too to try and figure this out. So the 3-part AI interview protocol, and it's really kind of 4 because there's a 3B that's sort of the same as 2, but people like 3s. So what I want to stress is that I want you to ask your interviewee to get on their computer during your live interview, whether they're in person or whether they're in a webinar, and pull up ChatGPT or their favorite large language model. And then I want you to ask them questions about your business and how they would solve them. And you judge them on that. And then as a follow-up, you ask them strategic processes and how to implement those on AI, and watch that as a follow-up, which is the 3B.
Yeah, it's all about the critical thinking component, right? It's going to be less about the specific outcome of the question. I know you have an example coming up, but more about how do they get there? What insightful questions do they ask you to get to the proper prompts? Once they get an initial answer, what are they able to take away from that and ask you questions as well as have their own to build the next level of prompts? That's where I think you should be looking, and that goes back to that case interview type of approach.
And that is the most important part, because this is allowing you to see a window into their way of thinking, which is hard to get in interviews without these case type interviews. And this somewhat creates a framework for the case type interview without having to have a framework already built in. So it's almost a win-win by using AI. It sort of hits both sides. Both, do they have AI skills, and can they think strategically and collaboratively and with a deeper understanding? These are skills that you really can get while you're watching them work on AI.
It's a simplistic example, but I had a head of total rewards that worked for me for many years that used to interview compensation managers and experts, and she'd give them an Excel problem to solve. And it was less about whether they got, the ultimate answer. It was about, were they able to utilize shortcuts, understand the advanced capabilities of Excel, as opposed to just what I would do, which is, fill in cells. So, it's that sort of example that you're talking about here. We all can utilize AI to some extent with ChatGPT, et cetera, but do they really have the advanced skills to get us to where we need to as a company?
Absolutely. And I do think we even get some behavioral understanding of people when they're interacting with tools that we don't when they're just interacting with people, you know. So some red flags. Sean and I have touched on a lot of this, so we may leave you to go back and read most of this, but there's some red flags like thinking that AI can solve everything, never looking at the AI's outputs, not understanding its limitations. And there's some great green flags that you want to look for. Things like understanding which tool to choose when, iterating through their choices, even if they should start doing the iteration on their own, cross-checking AI into Google. Maybe if they see a point that doesn't look right, they'll say, "Oh, let me go and check this with Google." Things like that, and discussing that this needs to be reviewed by humans. I think all of these things are important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most, for us, the human in the loop aspect, obviously we're biased, but believe that that is, still very, very critical to any project and any initiative that you have around AI.
Absolutely, and I am right there with you. So this is the bonus lesson. As you try and interview for these skills, I want to give you a skill to go off with. Next month's um, webinar is all about how to ask AI questions. And one of the things we're going to talk about is divergent thinking. AIs are not very great at divergent thinking on their own. They'll give you one answer. So you almost always have to ask for multiple answers. And this is a really great skill to take with you. So if you're asking AI for a strategic question, ask it to give you three answers. And I usually just use risk tolerance. Give me three different risk profiles, and then ask you to give you analysis of each. And I usually say with pluses and minuses. So give me three different risk profiles on my marketing strategy with pluses and minuses of each. Would be another way to write that same thing on the right. So that's just an extra little bonus because now, again, humans are better at that creativity, and you can review and synthesize the three answers that you get.
Yeah, that iterative thinking is what needs to stand out in my mind here, right? The creativity in between the prompts, and again the curiosity to find more and dig more, and utilize AI to help do that as opposed to using it as a crutch or as the solution.
Absolutely. So this is the example that Sean was talking about. So what you want to do is have them pull up their screen. Let's say you're interviewing a marketing manager, and um, you say, "Our lead generation is inconsistent. Show me how you use AI to improve it." And so you want to keep the question relatively short there, so you're not leading the witness. And then an example of a level one response, somebody that just is a tourist, would be they would ask ChatGPT, "How do I improve lead generation?" They would just ask the question outright, and they would accept that generic advice. And then a level three response might be, "I'm analyzing lead generation for your company," and then they serve this market. Maybe they've asked you they come back and forth with you and ask enough questions to formulate this correctly. "Here's our current process. I need you to identify three bottlenecks and suggest AI solutions for each." And then they'd ask a follow up, and that could reveal that strategic thinking that Sean and I have been talking about.
And I would be looking for, Brad, in between each of these steps for the candidate to be asking me questions, right? To further, I mean, obviously, if they're putting the company type in, the tool is going to be able to pull information out about the company. But are there insightful questions that go deeper than what may be out on a public site to better build the prompt and then continue to iterate with each of those with ongoing questions directed at me as the interviewer?
Absolutely, and I totally agree that is where I would be looking to, and I think that's that is the magic of this process, is watching how much they interact with you and interact with the tool all at the same time. So your next steps, I always try and make sure I make these actionable short meetings. I want you to, and this is the part where Sean would be glad to come in and help, update your job descriptions, because you all need AI in every job description, almost. There are probably a handful still that don't need it, like maybe Gardner, but there are not very many left. You need to train your team to interview with the way that we've talked about here. And then you need to go ahead and go back against those four different levels and audit your current team against the job descriptions and the AI competencies. And if they fall short, get them some training from Sean or myself or both, so that you can increase your level of AI competency within your team.
Yeah, I would agree with all of this, Brad. I think the train your interview team is obviously core to what a lot of us are having to do today, which is to raise the bar of knowledge within our existing employee basis, so that, when they're asking questions and they're assessing candidates on these capabilities, that they're knowledgeable to be able to see whether that person is fluent or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it is a hard problem because, as we know, younger people are better at all technology. It's just the way of the world and the way the world has always been. And AI, I think, is not any less suspect to that issue than any other. So you're going to have better AI adoption with the younger employees. So you will have to retrain your existing employees because, as we know, existing employees on average are older than the new employees that you're going to be hiring. That's just the laws of nature. So we want to make sure that we are pushing towards making sure that all of our employees are up to date with those new technologies, and especially AI. And I think it's more than just AI. I think AI sits at the pinnacle of a new set of technologies, but we're going to have to start talking about workflows and agents and how all of these tools work together, and lower the fear level about that Sean and I talked about AI replacing all the jobs. It may replace some jobs, but it's not going to replace all the jobs.
Absolutely.
And then here's where I turn off the thing if I can actually remember, and we will get chat up. And Don's already put his question, so he didn't forget it, but I'm going to see if I can figure out again how to turn on the tools. I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully you guys can remember whichever questions that you have, because the host tools aren't in that weird spot for some reason. And now you can unmute yourself. And I'll read Don's question. How would you address detecting leadership skills in your AI assessed, AI written resume? Are resumes even relevant anymore? Which I think is a really great question to you, Sean.
Yeah. Uh, my belief is that yes, resumes are still relevant. I mean, you go back 20 years and you had resume writers for people that had the ability to tap into those types of resources. They need to be validated like anything else, right? And people have been zhuzhing up their resumes since the beginning of time. Now they just have tools that can do it much more quickly, which is why, I think this topic that Brad's brought up is so important. The interview process is critical, and you need to have a coordinated approach to the interview process. You mentioned here, Don, leadership skills, right? Our philosophy is whenever you're interviewing a manager, that you need someone to focus solely on the leadership capabilities as one of their interviews. You don't want people asking the candidate the same questions. Somebody should have a leadership topic. Someone should have a culture topic. Someone should have a technical skills topic, and then come together and review everything as a full team to make an assessment as to whether to hire or not.
Yeah, so my question on that is really more about how are you using AI to detect someone's leadership skills so they even make the cut to get to that human centric interview, right? And that's a hard thing, right? I mean, other than somebody stating, I've led this team or done this or whatever, they may have led it really poorly. They may have led it in a situation where they needed to be super aggressive because a company's broken and one leadership style is needed over another at a point in time, and that's not what you need, right? So it's how do they make the cut in the first place? And this is high in my mind because I was mentoring a youth who's coming out of college, out of tech, in data science, and he was one of my scouts in my scout troop and reached out to me to say what was my journey into IT and how do I see things evolving. And naturally the conversation went the AI direction, right? So I was giving him some
Sure.
thoughts on, anyway, this question of, because he has leadership skills early in life from things he's done, and I know those leadership skills. Um, so how does he get past the resume pre-selection to evoke those things to start with, to even demonstrate that he might be a great candidate earlier in life than some other candidate, right? Based on what they've done. And I don't know how you do that until you get in front of a human at this point. But anyway, it's why it's on my mind, right? So
Yeah, well, I'd go to resume technique writing and say,
yeah,
this isn't an AI issue. This is about thoughtful descriptions of what he
yeah, yeah,
did prior in life that, that an AI tool, an ATS
yeah.
utilizing AI will pick up on.
Okay. Yeah,
And he can utilize tools to refine, those bullets and
yeah,
refine the way to say it. But it's got to be output based. It's got to be fact based. And
yeah.
then
Okay.
if you're the interviewer, I'm using behavioral event interviewing techniques to really dive into,
Sure.
does this person truly have it? And you
Yeah.
can use AI to better refine those behavioral event questions.
Yeah, and I think that the key to writing with AI, which is what Sean just touched on at a much lower level, but I'm going to take it up one level, is to inject the humanness in the beginning. And so give it your personal stories, give it your, in this case, give it the actual things that you've done and the details to the things that you've done, and let it stitch those together. And if you have it, give it your personal style to go on top of that. It will do really good if you give it both those things at a first draft. Then you edit that draft and then you stick it back in and say, did I make any grammar errors? And then it will tell you. And so that's the way I use AI to write. And I think that's a much better way than just asking it to write for you.
Okay. All right. And
Great.
unfortunately, I could go on for another, hour with questions for both of you guys. I have a back-to-back meeting on this, so I'd just like to plant a seed that I'd love to chat with you guys. I have some thoughts on a follow-up process you should add to your step 4 of your online, 10, 15, minute exercise. Anyway, I don't want to hog the mic here.
Don,
So
I'd love to hear them and I really appreciate you jumping on. And we're going to go ahead and end it unless anybody has any more questions. We'll take a couple more questions and then we'll end it. I like to end on time, but so we'll go a little bit more, a few more minutes, and then we'll end it.
So
Other questions?
John's unmuted. John, you got a
yeah,
question?
yeah. So how's it work? So full disclosure, you guys, or Brad, I got inspired after the last one and got into Anaconda and doing all kinds of crazy stuff and
Okay.
having to doing stuff that I don't know if it's good or bad because it's like spitting out all these numbers. But it seems like every time I try something, I fail at it, and then but I find something that goes, oh, this is perfect for this other thing, and I go, it's like I'm chasing my tail with it and stuff. So how do you in this interview thing you're talking about? It sounds cool and whatever, but it seems like everybody is new to this. So you don't really know where you stack up unless you're like some guy working on the Google Willow chip or something like that for 20 years. How do you figure out where you're at in that? Because it's so changing so fast.
So it's a great question, John. And I do think it's one that we're going to continue to struggle with as a society. And I give this little speech about that we are exponential humans. We're linear humans and with a linear brain running in linear time, living in now a very exponential world. And so it was just an exponential world. Now it's a very exponential world. So what you're struggling with is that weight of exponentiality on top of your linear brain and your fear and trepidation around not being able to keep up is justified. So first of all, you have to give yourself a break because you're living in that mode, and that's okay. And so everybody is feeling like that. It's sort of like this: we're all in 7th grade, and everybody is awkward, but everybody thinks that everyone else is cool. Okay, so that's where we are. Everybody thinks that everybody else knows everything about AI, but they don't. And so what my view is that in these interviews, what we're trying to do is trying to see if people have got the basic skills to strategically understand how to use these tools. And basic and strategic are important words there. I use basically strategic there because there is a point where you're just basically understanding the tools, and there's a point where you're past basic strategic where you can use them. So if we can get to that 3 level where you're able to get in the tools, ask correct questions, iterate inside the tool, and get real answers out that are meaningful to the company, that's where we're trying to get people to start off with. And then we can start training them up to do the bigger things. So I think that's my answer. Sean, you want to add other things to that?
Yeah, I think it's all spot on, Brad. I would characterize it, John, as those cultural traits that we've always been looking for, right? Is this someone that has a sense of curiosity? Is this someone that has both the IQ and EQ to be able to work within the organization and with the tools and continue to develop along the way, right? If we hire to a specific tool or a specific program, then that person's only as valuable as that program. And to Brad's point, things are exponentially changing. So we need someone who gets it today, but recognizes that they don't know it all and won't know it all, and continue to chase that answer.
Yeah, okay. But one follow-up there is I get what you're saying on that side of it, but I'm talking also about the other side of it's changing so rapidly. The person interviewing, the person doing something could be completely sound stupid, but it's something that's he just learned that's so new that the other person doesn't even know exists.
And
And it gets really tricky because just sitting there listening, you sit there and like you don't know how new things are and how I should have known this a year ago, or did I just learn it? And
so I think that on the manager side, good managers need to be open to learning new things, even from interviewees. So that's the bottom line on that. I mean,
okay,
they're going to learn. A great manager is going to learn something new in an interview and be excited about it, not worried about it that they didn't understand that or not know that. And I think that they're able to then understand if a candidate, you should be hiring people that you know things that you don't know. I guess that's the other
Sure.
way I would look
Yeah.
at it. Okay.
Fair enough.
So if you're doing something wrong, actually, you should surround yourself with people that know things that you don't know. Yeah, and it's really hard to interview for that. I mean, and that's been actually a problem going back to the beginning of time. And Sean will tell you that the hardest part is when CEOs are trying to hire, say, for IT or operations officers, because they don't have those skills. They're typically a different kind of person, a different kind of skill set. So they do have to enlist help. So the other thing you can do is enlist help. If you get too technical out, if you're a manager and you get too technical out of your base, then you can find a technical person that can come in and do that part of the interview.
Yeah,
All right.
I agree.
I
Go ahead,
told the
John.
people no, I was gonna say I told the people that I'm waiting on me that I need a couple more minutes. But John, based on stuff you said and the things that the three of you said, I'll go ahead and say that the thing, my step 4 was in your hiring process. I think, especially if you're having somebody do, 15 minutes of this, 10 minutes of this, 10 minutes of this, and one, you're under somewhat of pressure. Two, you're working online. It's like any situation where somebody's been given a problem for the first time, you kind of brainstorm about it, and when you're sitting around a table talking about it with your friends, your manager, whatever, and then you stop and you go off and do something else, your subconscious is still working on that, right? And you may come up with some other ideas. I would think in the interviewing process, if you create the space 24 hours after the interview for people to actually get back with you and say, hey, I thought about this, I thought about this. If that's still rolling around in their subconscious, one, that's probably desirable from an employee standpoint anyway. It shows they're interested in the problem. Two, it shows they haven't stopped thinking about it and they're still thinking creatively about it, right? Whether it's AI based or non-AI based. So it'd be interesting to create that opportunity for people post interview to have an additional way to do that feedback to show they're thinking differently about how to solve that problem. So anyway, just an idea.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept, Don.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, you may have had to jump off for a second, but the multiple interviews that we do and being very coordinated as to the topics that are covered. Let's just assume, and rather than doing them all in one day, you're bringing someone back a day later, they're talking to someone else, but that person is prompted to ask the question, hey, how did the exercise go? What did you learn? Anything you'd do differently, right?
Yeah.
Like you can build that
You
into
can
your
build on
interview
that.
process.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
I love doing it. I love doing it in person like that because you get the human reaction instead of their. I think that measured reaction and ability to write back is a great skill, but we learn much more by being in person and asking the question in person, as Sean said.
I agree.
Because you just get more out of a person when you can see how their body language is, even on screen. You just get more out of it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that. I got to go. And then,
Thanks, guys. I think we're all
all
going to go.
yeah. Okay. All
Awesome.
right. Talk to you.
Hey,
All right. Bye.
hey, Brad,
Great to see you
Yeah,
guys.
John.
is there any thoughts on future sessions on that whole training existing people? I really see a lot of pushback when I'm just doing automation things. People are, I don't want an AI salesperson gonna replace me, kind of a thing. And you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, there is quite a bit on that continually, and Sean and I talk through it with our customers all the time. Change management. In fact, like I said, so if you're rolling out an AI program and you're not doing 70% human, then you're making some mistakes. So Sean and I, both of our companies are very human-centered AI. Sean's is a human-centered company with some AI on top, and mine's an AI company with a lot of human-centered pieces to it, which is why we're on this call together. Okay, so but the bottom line is that you need to be training your employees to meet these new challenges, and you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to get everything, but one of those things is that you've got to get them understanding that the fear of AI is worse than AI itself. It's like medicine. If you don't start down the path of learning these skills, you're going to be replaceable everywhere, not just in your current job. Okay, so you may as well learn them and get better at them and help yourself to elevate yourself in the company along with everyone else, rather than wait for it to hide your head under a rock and wait for it to go away, because it's not going to go away. So as managers, we need to be gently, maybe even a little bit more gently than I just gave the message, giving that message to employees. And I think that's the real answer.
Yeah.
My other partner, just a quick story if you guys have it. So my other partner, Rick Martino, spent 20 plus years at IBM. He's older than us, but I think all of us are old enough to remember foils and projectors.
Yep.
IBM had a department of 40 foil makers. Their sole job was to create foils for projections for meetings. Obviously, that skill set went away completely, right, with the advent of PowerPoint and all the other tools. So I've started to use that example to say, if you're not keeping up with the times and you're not figuring out what skills are going to be necessary, then yeah, to your point, Brad, you're going to be left behind. It's really that simple. Not every job is going to be replaced by AI, but every job is going to be enhanced by AI.
Yep. Okay. Out of curiosity, this was just reminded me of this, Sean. How many job descriptions do you see with AI requirements of 5 to 10 years? We were going through those. Someone was out of user group. They were showing all of the ones that had like 10 years of required AI experience.
I haven't seen that. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny.
So I mean, I don't have 10 years. I may have 8 years, but I don't have 10 years. So it's silly.
This was a year and a half ago.
That's hysterical.
All right.
Pretty fun.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Thanks everybody. Thank everybody for being on.
One more question. I've been listening to a podcast called AI Daily Brief. Do you guys have any recommendations of something other than that to keep up to date with this stuff?
My favorite 2 letters that I read every day are Superhuman and Every. They're very well written. They're easy to follow, and each one comes with a theme. So you parse them more simply with your brain. And they come in newsletter, but they also have podcasts. Both of them have a podcast. I'm not a podcast person, but I read those 2.
What was the second one?
Superhuman, and what was the second one?
Superhuman and Every, like the word every day. It's just the word every.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are my 2 favorites.
That's great.
I like the AI Daily Brief. It's 10 minutes of news and then 20 minutes of it's 30 minutes and you're done.
I read the AI Daily Brief, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you both.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Bye.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Bye-bye.